to our episode of the Biz Buzz today. I'm here with my partner, Sean, and we have a very special guest with us today, Gerry Lalonde, joining us from British Columbia. So welcome, Gerry, today.
Thank you, Heather. Great to be here.
Awesome. So, just a little bio about Gerry. Gerry is a seasoned executive and a trusted business advisor with over 25 years' experience helping companies grow from early stage ventures to market leaders. As a CPA and founder of Crossroads Technology Partners, Gerry brings deep expertise from decades spent in the C-suite, serving nationally and internationally as a CFO, a CIO, a COO, and a CEO. He's taken 2 companies public, one on the NASDAQ and the other one on the Canadian Ventures Exchange, and is known for developing strong leadership teams and building strategic exit plans that secure both legacy and long-term growth. Gerry believes that real strength of any business lies not just in its numbers, but in its people and the ability to meet the challenges ahead. His clients often describe him as a rare mix of strategic thinker, practical doer, and deeply committed mentor who consistently delivers results. So welcome, Gerry.
Wow, thank you. Thanks for that. That's a great introduction.
I love it. And, it's very fitting with why we do our Biz Buzz podcast. Our focus is really people and educating people, giving them tips and tricks and tools. So we're excited to have you here to talk about what it means to be exit ready in your business. So
Excellent.
Let's jump right in.
Fire
So,
away.
Gerry, let's start with what are the most common blind spots that you see in growing businesses when it really comes to their long-term planning?
Yeah, so, great question. But because I'm always saying that you can't wait to do this, quote, exit planning or start thinking about how you're going to get out of your business someday when you're ready to exit. You got to do it. You got to do it up front. But obviously, business owners are focused on growing their business, selling to customers, bringing in new customers, developing new products, and so on. So they quite often don't have the thought process about what this means to be exit ready, right? And the blind spots usually have to do that. The biggest one we run across all the time is what I call the owner syndrome, which is the owner does everything, right? And when you start your business, clearly you have to do everything, right? That's just the way it is. But if you're going to grow your business to be $5 million in revenue or $10 million in revenue or $15 million in revenue, you cannot do that and continue to be at the center of everything. And so the biggest challenge, the biggest blind spot is finding that right moment, that timing when you start to extricate yourself from the day to day and you start to build actually a professional leadership team under you. And then it doesn't mean you're out of the business. It just means you can now focus on the strategic aspects of your business as opposed to just being day to day, because also you become the bottleneck.
So great point. So how do you assess or support someone in when that right time is, or do they come to you when they think they're ready? Can you give some thoughts around the when it's time to do that?
Yeah, well, they usually starts to be clear when the business starts to plateau, when the owner is saying, I don't have time to address everything. I'm too busy with this. I'm too busy with that. One of the key indicators for me is when I have a conversation with an owner and we talk about this whole aspect of getting your business exit ready, even if you're not planning on exiting. And they all sit there and they go, you know what? You're right. I should be thinking about that. And I'm going to give that some thought and I'm going to back to you, Gerry. And then they hang up the phone or get off the Zoom call and their controller walks in and says, boss, I'm not sure if we're going to make payroll this week. And guess what? All this thought process about doing long-term planning just goes out the window, right? Which is not unexpected. But it's when they get to the point where that's happening all the time, where people are complaining, saying, I can't get anything done here because the boss hasn't got time to approve something. That's usually the point where they either figure it out and start to bring in people that are smarter than them and know more than them to run the daily stuff of the business. And then they can pull themselves back. If they don't recognize it, then what happens really is they go into a plateau and then they go into a downward spiral.
Heather, that sounds like a good opportunity for someone like you to go in and provide some operating leadership.
So, from my perspective, the work I do is really to help those business owners identify where their blind spots are, right? But I'm not the guy who's going to fix everything for them. Right? I don't pretend to be able to do the work that Heather does or the work that you do or the work that other folks do. But based on my experience, I'm pretty good at figuring out what needs to get done. But I also have a software platform that identifies that if the day comes that they do want to sell their business, the buyer is going to do due diligence on it. And guess what? If you've never been through due diligence trying to sell your company, where you think you're going to get 4 or 5 times EBITDA because that's what you've read about in the press, by the time the buyers, lawyers and accountants and everybody else are done with you, you'll be lucky to get 1 times EBITDA. So I identify that for the owners, and I point out to them where they've got shortfalls and give them a roadmap that they can go deal with that on their own pace.
And I like that because I think too, there's a lot of folks that maybe know they need to do that, but the letting go part is really hard. So it's almost like you're coming in, Gerry, you're telling them what to do. Maybe they even need a mindset coach to be like, okay, now I need to know that I need to let this go. And how do I do that? The letting go part I find is often a big challenge for folks.
Well, it is. And that's what I do. Is I say, I do the front end analysis. And now I'm not here to talk about my practice so much as most exit planners do this, right? They'll identify at the front end what the gaps are. And then I will sit with the owner as an advisor on ongoing and help them bring resources in if they don't have the resources to fix. I give them everything they need to run with it on their own. I've never had anybody run on their own because if they could do it, they would have done it already. But I sit there as an advisor and really bring in resources if needed, or just hold their, a lot of it's just holding their feet to the fire.
Yeah.
And making sure that, if they say they're going to do something, they're going to do something. And the biggest one is always pulling them out of the day-to-day.
Mm-hmm.
They just feel like that's a loss of control, which it's not. It's actually an increase in freedom and in options and value added and all that good stuff.
I was just that's exactly what was running through my mind as you were speaking, which is a lot of times, this is your baby, right? This is my baby that I've created. And to let go of that control takes a big leap of faith to give that trust to someone else or other people. And that's a big mindset shift to both your points.
I was working with a client a few years ago, and they were running a really nice little business. They were doing about $3 to $4 million a year, but they had plateaued, right? And when I came in, I did the analysis, and I pointed out to the owner, the problem here is you. You're not letting go of anything, right? You're trying to do all the sales. You're doing the bookkeeping, right? And so we laid out a plan and everything, and she started down the path, but just couldn't bring herself to let go. And unfortunately, I heard just a few months ago that they'd gone under, which is not an untypical story.
Yeah. But a great example of how if they had have been able to or had the right mindset, right, they would have been able to hopefully, grow that business because clearly it was successful.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't grow a business to be $3 or $4 million and do that. You're doing something right.
Yeah.
You're blind to the things that need to get you past the 5 and the 10 and the 15 and so on.
Right. Yeah. So I think we've already maybe answered this, Gerry, but why is it so important to think about, an exit, even though I might be 10 years away from an exit? Why do I need to think about it now?
Well, there's 2 good reasons why you want to think about your exit now. Because number one is it's not about your exit, really. It's about running a company that has value so that when the day comes that you do decide you want to exit, whether that's 10, 15, 20 years from now, you will get maximum value for your business. And that means you're not running the day-to-day, you've got standard operating procedures documented, you've got vision, mission, all those things, you've got a sales process in place, not just depending on one person. I could go on and on and on, but I think you get the point. It's a well-managed, well-run company, and it's a company that's got what I call transferable value. And this is where, again, we talk about the owner not being day-to-day in the business, because if the owner is day-to-day in the business, you can't sell the owner. So it's not transferable, right? So that's one reason why you want to make sure that you've got maximum value at the time. But there is another second really important reason. There's a saying that says you don't pick your exit picks you. And by that, I mean, life has a habit of throwing curveballs at you, right? Yeah. You don't know. How many times have we seen the owner has a heart attack? The owner gets run over by a bus, whatever, right? And all of a sudden, the spouse or the partner is left with a business that they can't operate, and that the owner is gone, and the value is gone, and everything's messed up, and all their plans go out the bid. So that's another really good reason why you want to make sure you've got a well-run company, regardless of when you want to exit. And in fact, it might not be about an exit. It might be about an opportunity. You could have a competitor come to you and say, you know what, I'm really tired. I want out. Would you like to buy me?
Mhm.
And has your company got the the operating infrastructure, the financial wherewithal to be able to make that kind of transaction happen? So it goes both ways. It's opportunities as well as exit.
I like that. As you're talking there, and you talked about life has a way of happening. It reminds me of a very good friend of mine, and her dad runs a very niche business in terms of calibrating a special set of tools, meters and whatnot for a specific industry. And he does this as a one-man show. So he's got a pretty locked-in market. But he's at retirement age, right? I mean, he and my mom are the same age, so he's now in his 80s. And
Wow.
every time I see him, I'm going to see him on Sunday. And every time I see him, so have you decided to bring somebody on? Because at some point,
Yeah.
no, you're going to need, because he does everything himself. I don't know that he's got things documented or prepared. And to your point, Gerry, if he goes, chances are the business goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's not transferable even within his own family for somebody else to take it on yet because he refuses to let go of that knowledge.
Well, and actually, I mean, you bring up another good point. He hasn't actually got a business. He's got a job.
Yeah.
He's created a job for himself. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with creating a job for yourself. Just be clear that if that's what you've done, just like you walk away from a job when you're ready to retire, you walk away from this business that's a job, and you have very little value to pass on to somebody else. Right? And it's a huge mindset to shift your mindset from your business being a revenue and cash generator to being an asset that one day you will be able to dispose of and have value regardless of whether you're working it.
And you both just said something, Sean. You said something about this person who, isn't passing it on to someone in his family. What if someone in his family didn't even want it? I have a friend that has a
100%.
business.
100%.
And he has a business that is a very profitable business because he runs it and he's not ready to let it go. And the assumption that he's going to give it to his son, but his son is very little and his son might not want it. So that's also a great, thought as well. If you want it to be generational, that might not even be possible because they might say, see ya.
It's rare that the generational hand down of businesses works out.
Yeah.
And it's more than likely that the children don't want to have anything to do with working 80 hours a week to run
That's what I was going to say. They never see their dad. So that might be the
thing. So yeah, those are all things that, but the other thing too, though, is if you're an owner with the mindset that you are going to pass your business on to your children, wouldn't you rather pass on a well-run, well-operating business than a piece of crap?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep. Touche. Oh my goodness. So it's so interesting just to think about. I always talk to businesses about, well, what if, your EA left? Or what if that person who holds all the knowledge in the business leaves? But you're the person who holds most of the knowledge. And now I need to maybe pivot how I present to certain clients sometimes, or when I think about it, because really, if you're the one-man show and you don't let anything go, you're the person we need to protect.
That's right.
Get it all out of your head, right?
Yeah.
So Gerry, I want to jump in and ask because we're talking here, and I mean this is resonating more than I thought it would have with me, to be honest with you. So thanks for that. So how does one then prepare? I mean, you talked about long-term planning and being ready and having standard operating procedures and whatnot, but what kinds of mindset shift or thinking or considerations should one put in mind in order to get to that place where they are exit ready or start preparing so that they can be exit ready?
Well, so it depends on the company, first of all, and where they are, right? So as I say, when I go in and do my initial assessment and I look at the 24 areas, and if all 24 areas are not ticking a box, it's almost like, well, forget it. It's too late.
Right.
But, invariably, the same themes always come up. And the first one is, as I mentioned, how involved is the owner in the day-to-day? Now, you don't snap your fingers and stop being involved in the day-to-day if you've been involved in the day-to-day. So you got to do this carefully. But then the next thing we look at is, have you got clarity in terms of your vision, your mission, your values to pass on? Because you can bring in all the best leadership people into the company. If they haven't got a clue what direction you want them to go in, what your values are, well, they're going to be stuck having to come back to you all the time anyway, right? So that's usually the first step, is get clear on mission, visions. Interestingly, when I have this conversation and I ask them the question, do you have a vision, mission? They go, oh, yeah, we have that, we did that. I said, oh, yeah? So if I walk down and speak to Sally down the hall there, will she be able to tell me what it is? Yeah, well, when did you update it? Well, I put it together when I formed the company 15 years ago. Okay, well, you don't have a mission value statement in that case, right? Same thing with you review your KPIs on a regular basis. You have weekly meetings with your leadership team to review your performance. Oh, yeah, we do that. We do that every week. I said, you got minutes? Show me. He says, no, we don't keep minutes. You don't do meetings. Any buyer who comes in and looks at you, they won't believe you, right? They want evidence for everything. So some of it, where I'm getting to is, some of it is really easy to fix. But again, if you're blind to it, you never think about it. Like, you just don't think that I need to minute my meetings.
Yes.
But it makes lots of sense. Same thing with standard operating procedures. Do you have standard operating procedures? Yes, we do. Are they documented? Of course they're documented. When's the last time they were revised? 15 years ago when I formed the company, right? Same thing. So to answer your question, it really depends on what we've identified as the key areas. And the other thing is, I always say, you can't come to somebody like me and say, I want to sell. Can we fix things in the next 6 months? Let's make this thing prettier and put it on the market. It takes 3 to 5 years to put this in place, right? For two reasons. One is, if there's a lot to do, it's going to cost you a lot of money to do it. So you want to make sure you spread that over time. And secondly, if there's a lot to do and you try to do it all at once, you're going to take your management team and refocus them away from the business, and your business is going to suffer, right? So you want to time these things and structure them. We call them sprints, right? 3 to 4 month sprints to go address different issues. Now, of course, as you go along and you do more of these sprints, it becomes easier and easier and easier. And you can do more and more of them and get more and more value out of it.
Right. Wow.
So I'm not sure if I answered your question there, Sean, but that's...
Well, you absolutely did. I mean, what that brings to mind for me is, the earlier you start this and you put best practices in place, the less you have to think about it, because it just becomes part of the discipline.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And I think, too, a lot of folks don't know or wouldn't know what it actually means to evaluate your business for sale. I wouldn't think of meeting minutes. I wouldn't think of that. They're in the calendar, so we have them. But those are things that a lot of people wouldn't have a clue about.
Most business owners think that the key to getting a good valuation on your business is revenue and profit.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt that revenue and profit is really important, but it's just the starting gate. If you don't have good financials, if you don't have good revenue and growth and profitability, you're not even going to get to a conversation with a buyer.
Mm-hmm.
But that's only the first thing. Then the buyer starts to look underneath. And then they discover that, yeah, you've got great revenue, but 60% of your business is coming from one client. Big risk, right? Then they look under the covers and they discover that you've only got really, 60% of your business is coming from a single product line. You've got another risk, concentration risk. Then they dig a little deeper and they find out that, find out. And there's more to the valuation than just the financial, although they are critical.
I'm working for a client now, and we just implemented a large initiative. And one of the things we're doing is having an audit review of that. And the things that are being asked, how did these decisions get made? Can you demonstrate proof of those decisions, and that the proper people were engaged in order to make those decisions? Otherwise, it seems like things were being done willy-nilly. Right? And in the financial sector, many things have to be done based on regulatory requirements. And so being able to understand the regulatory environment and whether or not you're able to work within that framework is just as important. So as Gerry is speaking, I'm beginning to add different connectors into,
I hear it.
because there are more than one groups. And essentially, when a new buyer is coming to look at your business, they're going to be performing an audit of that business.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And for the buyer, it's all about risk, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to identify the opportunity. So this is where, have they got good revenue, they got profitability, first step. But then it's all about discounting risk. And every time they dig and find something that's not quite, systematically done, that's risk. And every time you add risk, you reduce the price.
I mean, a buyer is buying something because they want to scale their business,
Exactly.
right? And if what they're buying has risk and cannot be sustained, then they will be less likely to buy it.
Exactly. And if they do buy, it'll be at a high discount rate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. This has been a wonderful conversation. And I
But
love that.
before we go, I want to say one thing. It's kind of like buying a house. You buy a brand new house, or you buy a house that's kind of falling apart.
Yeah.
Right? But in a great location. But you got to take into consideration the trade-off is I'm going to have to knock that old house down or gut it to the studs and rebuild it. And do I want to take that on? Because that is a lot of work.
I use a lot of real estate analogies too. And, another good one is, property owners that have rental property, right? You got one rental owner who just wants cash coming in the door and doesn't maintain the building, doesn't care about it, he just wants rent, becomes a slum landlord, whatever you want to call it. You got the other owner who says, I know I'm not going to make money in the early days on my rent, but the property value is going to go up. And so for the property value to go up, I have to maintain that property. It's an asset, not a revenue stream. Same thing for a business.
Yeah.
I love that. And to get good tenants in that are going to stick around and continue to pay the rent, you want it to be maintained. And that comes back to having good processes in place that maintain good employees that want to stick around because you got your stuff together.
It all works together and it all builds momentum, doesn't it?
Yes. Yep. Wow. Okay. Mind blown. And I love that Sean said that this is resonating more than he expected it to. And great linkage to some financial industry clients and audits. That was an aha for me as well. So
you know that saying, this is the love I never knew I needed. This is the conversation that I never knew I needed. So Gerry, thank you for that.
We took care of one of your blind spots.
There we go.
Well, Gerry, thank you so much for joining us today. And Gerry, if you want to remind us where we can find you, what's the best place to get a hold of you?
The best place to get a hold of me is on LinkedIn.
Yes.
You've got my LinkedIn profile link you can put in.
We'll share
and email, of course, is glalonde@xrtp.com. That's XRT as in Tango, P as in Papa.com.
Awesome. Wonderful. Great. And then, of course, you can always find myself, Heather Smokum, on LinkedIn as well, or at lotusoms.com. And you can find my partner, Sean, here on LinkedIn as well. So you know where to find us. You know where to find us if you need help planning your exit, if you need, once the plan's in place, help executing on that exit, and managing the project from an exit perspective. That could be Mr. Bahari over here. So we are all here to help. And again, Gerry, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
All right.
Gerry.
Thanks everybody.
Bye,
Keep the buzz
everybody.
going.
Keep the buzz going. Bye now.